we have a new Pope, and I bet you're itching to learn just a little bit more about him. And to say the least, I'm excited. What is up, guys? Welcome back to Red Top Report. I know it's been a while since you've seen us last, but we got a new Pope, and we are back. And joining me behind the desk is our boy Charlie from the movie reviews. You know him.
It's good to be back again.
Dude, I gotta say, I am so excited to be doing Red Top Report again, and especially under the recent circumstances that really came as a shock, I want to say, to everybody involved.
I am still, in shock that we have the Pope that we have. So why don't you talk a little bit about him?
He's from my hometown, guys! He's from Chicago, and I'm from the Chicago area. He's technically from the Chicago area, too. We're both from Chicagoland. That was the most exciting news I've ever heard. And just as a matter of passion, you have to think about it. The Holy Spirit could have picked any place in the world to permit the next pope to be elected from, and he chose the same streets, the same neighborhoods, the same restaurants, the same culture that I came from. And that's, I don't care what anybody says, that's a huge honor. And I gotta say, this must be how Argentines felt after Pope Francis was.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm still processing this, so I think in time I'll be able to better kind of explain how I feel about this.
It's surreal. He's the first American pope. He's from Chicago, and what gets me the most is the name that the Holy Father chose, Pope Leo XIV. Guys, I don't know how many of you know the significance of him choosing that name? The 14th Lion of the Catholic Church is essentially what he's saying. And he has gigantic shoes to fill. And I think that he knows that he has giant shoes to fill. He gave his homily to the cardinals just a few days ago. And now, today, we're kind of wondering, okay, what's this papacy going to be like? Is he going to be going in a more progressive direction like Pope Francis was taking things? Is he going to be going in a more dialogue-driven direction? Is he going to be highlighting doctrine and dogma? Is he going to be focusing on the issues of the family or the people on the periphery, synodality, papal authority? Which direction is he going to go on a lot of these things? Now, obviously, for the people that were able to listen in on his short little speech, after he walked out as Pope Leo XIV, you would find out that he's actually a big supporter of synodality. Yet to be seen what that means, but for those looking at kind of an idea of what synodality is when they focus more on churches governing in their general areas. Like, for example, the U.S. has the USCCB, Italy has the Italian Bishops' Conference, so on and so forth. So when you think about synodality, it's about being a listening church. So he wants to listen to the laity too. There's going to be some involvement in laity to some extent in how the church operates. So you got to think about these sorts of things as what synodality means. And a lot of people on the conservative end are worried about him being a synodal pope, because when you think about synodality, first thing you think about is the German synodal way, which is trying to, make everybody a pro-homosexual, LGBT-affirming Catholic faith, which we cannot be given the past dogmas and doctrines of the Catholic faith. So when we think about it with that broad brush, it's hard to say what he's going to be, but we do know that he's going to be his own pope, and I do definitely see that. I don't view him as somebody who is particularly controlled by any faction of the church. There's evidence that he actually met with Cardinal Burke before the conclave began, and Burke's camp. Allegedly, there was this big meeting of those cardinals in Rome, and Cardinal Robert Prevost, which was his name at the time, now Pope Leo XIV, is I think they left pleased, and I saw both Cardinal Sarraz and Cardinal Burke's tweets after the fact, and they both seem very enthusiastic about Pope Leo XIV coming in. So I'm going to be defensive. There's a lot of people that went right on the offensive against him. I'm going on the defensive against him immediately. I want to give him a shot.
And I just want to say, in the live stream that we did before the Pope was elected, I kind of went on record and said we should never have an American Pope. Now, We have an American Pope.
Yeah, how'd that go?
So I just want to say I'm going to give the Holy Father, a fighting chance to prove me wrong, and I will humbly accept being wrong.
Well, and he also did a lot of his ministry in Peru. So there's that too. That's what really won over the Global South cardinals, I hear. Again, this is all speculation. These are things that we hear from different cardinals kind of talking about how everything went down. And there was some other cardinals that said he got well over 100 votes, which is well over the 2/3. So it really seems like he's going to try to be a unifier of the different camps in there, which is going to mean some things that maybe more conservative traditional Catholics like me and Charlie might not particularly like. I personally am not a fan of synodality because it birthed the synodal way in Germany, but I do trust the Holy Father. At least at the beginning, charitably and faithfully, that he'll do a good job and he'll do synodality right. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But the other thing that I think that he really wants to highlight, and this is what I wanted the subject matter of this video to be, he seems to be. First off, it is his name. Second of all, he came out dressed more traditionally, which I thought was very respectable. I thought that was really wonderful. Pope Francis came out in the, traditional white cassock. He wasn't wearing anything flashy, but, Pope Leo XIV, he comes out dressed similarly to Pope John Paul II in 1978 and Pope Benedict XIII, or the 16th, wow. Pope Benedict XVI in 2005. So wearing the red, well, good grief, what's the red thing that goes over him called?
I don't know.
You failed.
I believe it's called the alb. Am I wrong about that? It might be the alb. But anyways, we'll correct the record in the video. But he was allegedly. He was allegedly supposed to be kind of a compromise and a moderate candidate, but when I find out that the reason he comes out dressed like that, and then in addition to him coming out dressed like that, he's presenting himself as like a return back to what he believes that the church is supposed to be. And then he did his homily, or then he did his first address to the bishops. Can you put up the quote from that? And we can just see what he said.
Yeah, let me get right on that.
So this is his first address to the College of Cardinals. And this was what he talked about as why he chose Pope Leo XIV. Pope Leo XIII, the historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. Today, the Church offers to all her treasure of social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and the developments of artificial intelligence. Now, when you look at what he's highlighting here, he's saying that we're in the midst of a new industrial revolution. And that, we face all sorts of new threats that now exist because of the existence of artificial intelligence, and the church is going to need to speak on that. And as much as I think that's wonderful, I think the most wonderful part of that quote is what he brings up, and it's the encyclical Rerum Novarum by Pope Leo XIII. Now, if you guys don't know, Pope Leo XIII was the Pope, all throughout the late 1800s. And he was facing the industrial revolution, where everything was being turned into factories, where you had communism ravaging the world. You had Americanism going all across the world. If you don't understand what Americanism is the idea that that everything needs to be democratized and that everybody has a say in things. Very similar to synodality, but synodality still retains the hierarchical structure at the Supreme Pontiff being that final say and him having the ultimate authority on whether there should or should not be synodality on something.
So that's kind of like if the father in a family has his kids sitting around tables and discussing things together and then lets them come to him with their concerns, but then the dad gets the final say.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that dovetails really nicely into exactly why I'm more optimistic than ever that he did that, because he cited Rerum Novarum, which was it's the encyclical addressing all of these things. Now, a lot of people think that Rerum Novarum is this political document that's specifically talking about, social structures and things like that. But, when you really dig into everything that he's talking about regarding private property rights, regarding fair wages, regarding the ability to collectively bargain and unionize, you really do start to see that the bigger picture is there's a why do we need to do all these things that's underlying that entire encyclical. And it's something that we at Red Top Report have taken very seriously from the very beginning, and that's the preservation of the household, the family. And he institutes as a teaching one of the most important social doctrines of the Catholic Church, and recognizing it for what it was in Rerum Novarum. Now, can you put up the first quote that we have from Rerum Novarum? You'll see what I'm talking about.
Here we go.
He says right here, hence we have the family, the, quote, society of a man's house, a society very small, one must admit, but none less a true society, and one older than any state. Consequently, it has rights and duties peculiar to itself, which are quite independent of the state. The contention, he goes on later in the encyclical, then that the civil government should at its option intrude into and exercise intimate control over the family and the household is a great and pernicious error. So if you guys don't know anything about encyclicals, this is the Pope binding Catholics to follow something in the faith. Now, there's different weights to different types of papal documents. There's apostolic letters, there's conciliar statements that go along with it, but they are considered, encyclicals themselves are considered magisterial, which means that we are bound to follow them as Catholics. They are believed to be in continuity with all the past popes of the time as we realize a fuller and fuller and fuller extent of the truth of the Catholic faith. There's levels where people say infallible. There's levels where people say, dogma, doctrine, things like that. Now, these don't rise to the level of dogmas or doctrines, but they do rise to the level of binding. Now, that's not to say that they aren't true and that they're not binding. You can think of it as the way we rank, is the way that we go through the process of sainthood, where you go from venerable and then you go to blessed, and then after you go to blessed, you go to saint. Think of it like that. They're not less holy. We're just at stages of understanding, and this is considered binding, which means that we are to follow it. So that's kind of how that's a good way to describe it in at least layman's terms, as we are, hopefully. I mean, hey, maybe there's some clergy watching the show, right? That would be good. But when you really dig down into that, you really find out that what he's essentially saying is that the smallest society, and this has been verified through other magisterial documents down the line, all the way to Pope John Paul II, that the family is the first cell of civilization. It's not particularly the individual. And because of that, there are rights that belong to the family that kind of take a primacy over the rights of the state authorities. And the state authorities are not supposed to get involved in these things unless it's necessary for the common good. And the family should never be working for anything unless it's in the common good of the family as well. This is subsidiarity, which I believe was also developed by Pope Leo XIII. So, you think about it that way. He wrote a massive number of encyclicals in his papacy, and he really did establish Catholic social teaching as we know it today. So, just going on a little bit, he really talks about structure. He talks about, workers, and he also talks about fathers and mothers. And here's this quote from him about fathers specifically and how this is supposed to be structured in the family, that hierarchical view. So he says, the child belongs to the father and is, as it were, the continuation of the father's personality. And speaking strictly, the child takes its place in civil society, not of its own right, but in its quality as a member of the family in which it is born. And for the very reason that the child belongs to the father, it is, as St. Thomas Aquinas says, before it attains the use of free will, under the power and the charge of its parents. The children belong to the parents. Now we look at this. I'm going to continue on with the quote, but I want to highlight this really quickly. He's giving the rights to the parents. This is where civil government these days is trying to do all sorts of things to intrude in parents' lives. Teachers with transgenderism is a great example of this. You can go down the list of all the different things that government is trying to intrude into the affairs of the family. No fault divorce is an intrusion into the family. Allowing women in the workforce is a government intruding into the family, because the family is supposed to be structured in a specific way. And he goes through all of this throughout this. And he's specifically condemning the socialists, which in reality, at the time, would be more cultural Marxists. What cultural Marxists they sought to do, they sought to deconstruct society in order to build a socialist society out of it. Now, it is true that there are economic systems that he's referring to, but he's generally talking to them as a group. We know who these people are today, and a lot of them, I don't even know, want to build a communist utopia. I just know that they want to undermine and destroy the Western world. And he goes on to say, the socialists, therefore, in setting aside the parent and setting up a state supervision, act against natural justice and destroy the structure of the home. So you have this twofold thing going on here. The state inserting itself into the family, the properly ordered family dynamic is sinful, because he's called it a pernicious error. If you do that if you commit pernicious error, if you intentionally commit pernicious error, I would say that would be considered a sin, Charlie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. So when we have that situation going, now we move into this, the state being involved in any way, in partial ownership, a little bit ownership, any ownership over the church, or any ownership over the children in a marriage, in a family, they are also committing grave error. So there's two sins here that he's outlining that exist when you're kind of intruding into that family, that family environment. And this specifically relates to the anti-feminism position that is very, very, very clearly laid out in Rerum Novarum in regards to women. And he talks about the nature of women here. Women, again, are not suited for certain occupations. A woman is by nature, fitted for home work, and it is that which is best adapted at once to persevere her modesty and to promote the good bringing up of children and the well-being of the family. So when you take her out of that role of doing home work, you've left her in a scenario where she cannot properly bring up the children and support the well-being of the family, which on her part would be considered sinful. This is a complete repudiation of the feminist idea that women can do it all, that you're a boss babe, that you're a boss girl. You can take on the world, you can have a job, you can have kids, you can do all that. All of those things were intentionally argued by, as Pope Leo would have called them, these socialists, these cultural Marxists, these people looking to undermine the idea of the traditional household, the family, and all these things. They all sought to put women into the workforce because they knew that once they were in the workforce, that it would be incredibly difficult for the family to subsist. And this is him calling this out right here. And this is from 1891. Rerum Novarum is from 1891. And what I wanted to get to is that Pope Leo XIV appears to have an intimate knowledge of this document and wants to base his papacy off of the things contained in this document. That has me very optimistic about this papacy, about this Holy Father, about all of these things. If he's read this document, I truly do believe that the Holy Father has a very, very, very good idea that this is about the household. This is about the family. And all the attacks that have been placed on the family specifically, especially the institution of marriage, which if he's familiar with Rerum Novarum, I imagine he's familiar with some of his other encyclicals as well. And he talks about the attacks on marriages in those encyclicals as well. Can you put it up right now? We have we have Arcanum Divinae from 1880. This is from before Rerum Novarum came out. So this is we're kind of building up to that wonderful, wonderful encyclical Rerum Novarum. And he says, much more pernicious is the sin of those who would fain pervert utterly the nature of marriage, perfect though it is, and complete in all its details and parts. The chief reason why they act in this way is because very many, imbued with the maxims of a false philosophy and corrupted in morals, judge nothing so unbearable as submission and obedience. Now we're going back to what we were talking about with the women here. This is again kind of a subtle jab at feminism and socialism, with the state trying to intrude on that organized first cell of civilization that is the family. So what we have over here, he's basically saying that the pernicious sinners are the ones doing this. Again, it is a sin to do all of these things. These feminists, anyone that's trying to pervert what marriage is. Go down the line of things that have happened to attack gay marriage, transgenderism, birth control, abortion, no-fault divorce. All of those things are things that Pope Leo was warning against coming down the pike here. He was just talking about anybody that would do anything related to these things. And here we stand today. The church is facing all of these things. And we have this new pope with this intimate understanding of Leo XIII, so much so that he took the name Leo XIV. How can I not be excited about that is the real question. And anyways, he goes on here to say, and strive with all their might to bring about that not only individual men, but families, also indeed human society itself, in haughty pride, despise the sovereignty of God. It's so lovely. It's so beautiful the way that he puts it. By undermining the sovereignty of the family, you take out that natural sense of organization, of hierarchy, of obedience. If you undermine the sovereignty of the family, you ultimately undermine the sovereignty of God, which is why we can ultimately say that this attack on the family is from the devil. This is the devil. He wants to undermine our sovereignty in God. Yeah, sovereignty of God.
And you nailed it with that, laundry list of things: abortion, no-fault divorce, all those things, contraception. It's all been an attack on the family in the last, several decades or over a century.
I'm going to say well over a century. He saw this down the pike. This is when the feminist authors were really beginning their push. This all started in about the 1880s. Some will say, I think Tim Gordon say the 1860s, but regardless, this is the time. And here's Pope Leo XIII responding to this. So, I want to think that there's a lot of hope here that we have a pope with the intimate knowledge of these attacks on the family, with an intimate knowledge of Pope Leo XIII and his foresight about all of the fruits of that demonic attack against the family, against us, those rotten fruits, I should say, that we've seen. And you will know them by their fruit. The people who attacked the family gave us this degenerate world that we live in right now, that's filled with pornography, adultery, abuse, disobedient housewives, disobedient working wives, just all across the board, a complete rejection of the hierarchy of the family. And again, as Pope Leo XIII would say, if you're these people that are undermining the sovereignty of the family are doing so with the intent of undermining the sovereignty of God. Because ultimately the structure of the family as that first cell of civilization is going to be, you have your children, you have your wife, you have your husband, and he is the final say about any of the temporal aspects of the household, and you have to be obedient to him in all but sin, including prudential judgments. And then the man is the one who gives all praise and glory to God. All praise and glory to God. And with that, I have to say, God bless our new Supreme Pontiff, Pope Leo XIV. Pope Leo XIV, our Chicagoan American Pope. I know, Charlie, you still can't believe it, can you?
I never thought this would happen in my lifetime, let alone ever before the Second Coming. I honestly thought an American Pope was something of the imagination.
Well, imagine no more. Reality is kind of just fallen upon us right now. We are witnessing before our very eyes the beginning of the 14th lion of the Catholic Church, the 14th lion papacy. Leo means lion. And, you know, like I told you, he's got big shoes to fill. I'm excited. But, you know, he tied it to AI. He tied it about a new industrial revolution. But I love that because, to be honest with you, if he's considering this a second industrial revolution, then he needs to know, or he must know, I would say, that this is going to come with new attacks on the family, new attacks on the household. In continuity with all of our other pontiffs leading up to this point, we have Pope Francis condemning surrogacy and IVF. We have Pope Benedict condemning IVF as well. We have Pope John Paul II. He condemns birth control. He condemns divorce. He condemns he condemns the undermining of the family as being, or the foundation of society being the individual as opposed to the family, right? So, and that's one of the things that I think that everybody needs to know, is that the individual is not the building block of civilization, the same way a subatomic particle is not the building block of matter. Much like an atom, if you think about it, the family is the building block of civilization, just as an atom is the building block of matter. Subatomic particles are the building blocks of an atom. Individuals are the building blocks of a family. So when you think of yourself as an individual, well, that's fine. But when you're looking at society, it's not built up by individuals. It's built up by families. And on that note, guys, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap up the episode on that note. And a huge shout out to Cardinal Dolan, who I think might have been the kingmaker in this wonderful papal conclave. Oh, and I'm not done, because you need to give us your money.
You'll be on a rocket ride to the moon. And while you're there, would you pick up some of that nice green moon money for me?
No deal, McCutcheon. That moon money is mine.
And you can give us your money by going to Subscribestar. That's right, we got a Subscribestar. You can join us for as little as $5 a month as a recruit. Thanks, friend. You can join us for $10 a month as a Red Top Respecter, and you can join us for $25 a month as a Giga Chatter, or $50 a month as a Legacy Bronze, and we have a Gold and Silver as well that you can check out at the bottom. We need your help to make sure that we can continue doing this show and continue doing this show as often as we can, because as it stands now, we're doing it kind of as time permits. We're trying to, we're kind of trying to enjoy this time. I know Charlie has obviously many things to do. I appreciate you for coming here and volunteering to, keep doing your half of the show. And overall, I'm excited for what we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, we very much would appreciate you becoming a friend, at least a friend of ours.
Anything helps, guys. And with that said, we'll catch you next time on Red Top Report. God bless you.